Maybe let's give it to 11:05. I see some
Yeah,
people
yeah,
coming in still.
perfect. There's a lot of people from Oakland.
We have Elise on as well. Elise, where in the world are you actually located?
So right now I'm in North Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Cool.
As people are trickling in, I'll just acknowledge that I'm on. So I don't if people are used to a land acknowledgement, but so North Vancouver, but it's the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Indigenous tribes. So the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh bands are native to this land, and we're merely visitors. But I always love doing that in the context of anything to do with climate, because all of us that want to do this work are only revisiting the knowledge that the Indigenous elders who have stewarded the land that we all enjoy have known for a really long time. So it's important to recognize the contributions as we, as we try to navigate our work to mitigate disaster, that we're actually reviving ancient knowledge.
Thanks
Great,
for
thank you.
that.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we can get started now, right, Sam?
Yeah.
We can let a few folks trickle in. So
Yeah.
welcome everybody to this. We're really excited about this event. So my name's Utkarsh, and we have Sam as well, and we're representing the Work on Climate group. And then we also have Pranav and Daniel, and they are with Innovate Climate Careers. What I will also do is share a link to a group notes document. So if you folks can just help us take some notes, that would be great. So I'll just put it in the chat here. And I have links to both of the Work on Climate group, as well as the Innovate Climate Careers newsletter link if you want to sign up for both of those as well. With that, I will leave it to Daniel and Pranav to introduce Elyse, and take it away, please.
Sure, thanks, Utkarsh, but I would ask Sam to just come in and kick us off. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think Utkarsh, you did a great job. I think you said pretty much all the key things. The one other thing I'll say is, if there's anyone on the call who isn't a part of Work on Climate, I highly recommend you guys join. We're a highly active Slack community that's dedicated to help you with your career on climate, whether it's through finding a job or entrepreneurship or learning about certain subjects or just meeting other people. And so Utkarsh is going to put the link in the chat, but we are incredibly excited for this talk, guys. So thank you so much, Daniel and Pranav and Elyse, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks Utkarsh and Sam for exploring this new opportunity to have an event like this. I know I'm really excited about this. Really quickly, I started Innovate Climate and thereafter Innovate Climate Careers. Innovate Climate was a way to just help startups get their name out there and become more visible to the community as a whole. Innovate Climate Careers stemmed off because there were a lot of people signing up and saying, hey, I'm looking for jobs. So I'm just like, let's put this together. Essentially, I help feature candidates who say, I'm looking for jobs, feature them, and offer anyone to reach out and make connections there. Likewise with hiring managers, really just saying these people are hiring, and if you think you're a great fit, hit intro me there. And the idea really was, let's bring a human component back into applications and applying to jobs, especially during the pandemic, rather than just hitting submit and letting things just go into the abyss. Really trying to at least have a touch point to make it feel a little bit less, I don't know, like you don't know what's happening. Anyways, with that said, Pranav has been amazing. He's been helping me out with Innovate Climate Careers. He's the one who puts together the newsletter every week and really makes my life a whole lot easier, as I'm one person who has a day job that has nothing to do with climate. So with that said, Pranav, go ahead and take us away.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for having the patience while we just go through our hygiene. Very quickly, we're going to be having Elyse talking to us and the opportunities for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then it's going to be an open Q&A. We ask you to write down your questions in the chat, and then we're going to invite people to speak. We are very curious to know what questions you might have. In fact, that's the part of the segment that we're really looking forward to. Allow me to introduce Elyse. Elyse is a VP at Active Impact Investments, a certified B Corp based in Vancouver, BC, whose mission is to support environmental sustainability through profitable investment. She leads internal operations and is on the platform services team, providing talent, marketing, finance, and impact support. She began a career cultivating climate and sustainability campaigns at Ecojustice, Canada's largest environmental law charity, where she recognized the need for financial incentives to drive environmental action. She's also spent 5 years with Renewal Funds, where she supported the raise of $147 million for sustainable consumer goods and environmental technology. She was most recently with Rhiza Capital, helping cultivate an accessible place-based venture fund. She is also an active board member, investor, and side hustler. In 2020, she was named a Clean50 Emerging Leader. Elyse, all yours. Please take it away.
Thanks. Oh man, sitting through the bio that you have submitted is tricky. So I mean, we will start with like the more human side of who I am before going into the presentation, but even before that, I'll just echo what Pranav just mentioned, where like my intention in being like the speaker today is to provide as much information about myself, Active Impact, and the opportunities in the companies that we invested. So much information so as to inspire your questions and to emphasize the dialogue part of this event. So I think this would be far more interesting for everyone involved if it's less of my face and corresponding slides and more of your questions and like really practical things that people can take away and apply to their lives, and hopefully a fulfilling career in sustainability and climate impact. So, you know, thank you so much for going through kind of the highly level parts of my bio. The other, like, what's not in there is that despite working in venture capital and climate venture capital, I am not a formal finance person. My education is in freshwater policy and governance and Mandarin. I grew up, you know, as mentioned, like in British Columbia, Canada, on the West Coast, surrounded by like the ocean and the mountains. Grew up very much like just, you know, the nature is my backyard. And as early as I can remember, I've never really understood how humans interact with our planet. Like I remember my mom took me to a landfill when I was 9 because I didn't understand like the difference between garbage and recycling. And seeing a landfill as a kid was one of the most impactful experiences, and perhaps like why I decided to build my career around sustainability, is because how can we just live this way and like dispose of these things and like have this impact on the planet and not really be cognizant of it? It's just purely not sustainable. It's like, for me, it comes from the rooted place is logic. Like it just doesn't make any sense. And then secondary to that is like the emotional connection I feel to the creatures that we share this planet with and the people who are impacted most severely by our actions. And often those people aren't people in like our immediate networks, it's people around the world. And so after, you know, wanting to work in freshwater policy and governance, I worked at Ecojustice, which is an environmental law charity. And while I was working there, working on campaigns to like prevent the construction of fossil fuel infrastructure and to like get neonicotinoid pesticides out of like agricultural products because they were related to pollinator death, my partner and I were putting together everything we had to get our first mortgage. And this was at the same time as the Standing Rock protests in the US and the Dakotas. And while being completely aligned with everything, aligned with what the water protectors were protesting, and having that be part of my everyday work, I then learned that my mortgage was actually invested in all of those things. So the Northern Gateway Pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, like I was in my biggest investment as an individual, helping to create these systems that I thought I was being altruistic in my everyday life. And so enter me learning what impact investing is. And so essentially it's like the business of sustainability. So investing for a beneficial environmental or social impact and having to deliver returns to investors, not in the traditional financial sense, though that is very much a real thing, but also deliver a climate or a social benefit. So I began my career at Renewal Funds, which is based in Canada, in Vancouver here. Mission Venture Capital, a very early entrance into the space. I don't know if anybody on the call has heard of Joel Solomon, but he wrote a book called The Clean Money Revolution. And he was really like the catalyst into my joining Renewal Funds. And I did so as the assistant to the CEO, like very entry level, but like there is no ideal way to enter into this work. Essentially, I like came to their doorstep and was like, I will do anything. I just want to be part of this. And through just like my eager personality was able to kind of access successively more exciting pieces of work within the firm, including the raise that Pranav mentioned in my bio. And then went to Rhiza, was a very local place-based firm, and I have been with Active Impact Investments like in a consulting capacity for over a year, but have been full-time since July. The kind of through line between Renewal, Rhiza, and Active is that we're all certified B Corps. So if there's any like questions later on about like what it's like to work at a B Corp, I serve on a board for Western Canada and I'm very connected to the B Corp community. Huge evangelist for looking for B Corps, even as a subset within like sustainability or climate jobs. Okay, so now I'm going to shift to presenting mode. Whomever is the host, do you mind just giving me the power?
Sam or Utkarsh? Help us.
Is it working now?
Yeah, there we go.
Amazing.
Okay. So everybody can see this guy's leg and shoe. Cool. Okay. Now I'm just going to adjust my other screen so I'm looking at faces as opposed to my own face. Okay, cool. So I'm starting with this picture. It's the Active Impact team and our families. A couple of weeks ago, we took a retreat to the Sunshine Coast. And I want to start with this because it really speaks to our culture. And I think it's also emblematic of what most people are probably seeking when they search out purposeful work. And this just makes me so stinking happy because what like the ideal, I think, is when you're looking for a career that you find something that supports you as a whole person. So finding purpose in your work supports like who you are at your core, like your heart, how you want to make an impact in the world, what you want like your life story to be. But it should also support your life in a practical sense. So you see like people, those of us on the team who had kids, myself not included, but brought their kids, people's partners, because your family is part of who you are, it's part of our company. The segregation of your work life and your home life, I think, is walls that were crumbling before, but have really just been leveled thanks to COVID. I saw somebody with their cat walking in front of their face, like, absolutely. If I was doing this from home, you'd probably hear my dog at some point. But it's part of the reality project of the 2020 work experiment. And so the kind of the secret sauce of us at Active Impact Investments is our culture. So we're all aligned in that we see the problems taking place in the world and we want to do something about it. We see our business in investing in climate tech businesses as a key solution towards doing that. And then we give people the tools in both their professional and personal life to do the best work possible. And yeah, so you see like on the left-hand side, this guy here, that's our managing partner, Mike Winterfield. That's me, that's my husband. But I think leading with culture is a big reason why I think the world will work is I'm going to endorse it. And we always lead with our mission. Pranav mentioned it, but I want to highlight the provide funding and Climate Capital. We are a mere small player in a large, increasingly like huge world. We just closed our second fund. We have 70 million Canadian under management. We're focusing exclusively on climate tech now, that we didn't start that way. Our first fund was broadly impact. And, but our niche within that very, very large world is SaaS companies in the verticals of sustainable food and water, smart infrastructure, clean energy and transportation, and the circular and sharing economy. And how we curate our value proposition for founders that we want to invest in their business is that we all have an operating background. In particular, Mike, our founder, has spent a better part of 2 decades in a sales role. He was actually a recruiter, so he ran sales teams and is very connected to how to
Is it mute? Did Elyse cut out for everyone?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
All right, well, hopefully she comes back in a sec. Let me just message her.
While we're just waiting for her, I just would want to, sort of answer this query that some people might have in the mind, as to the approach that Elyse has just been sharing in terms of her journey into the space. And I think this is something that we discussed, Elyse and us at the team, in terms of really wanting to put it across to everybody that all of us who are here in the climate space can really have very different starting points. And the climate challenge that is before us actually requires people from different disciplines and different sort of thought processes to come together to really challenge and solve. And that's the point that she was making when she was sharing her journey. I think she's just coming back online. I can see her screen.
I'm sorry, everybody. What the heck happened? I have no idea. My internet didn't just drop out. It was trying to connect to something else, which has literally never happened before, but here we are. This is life. So sorry about that. I'm going to try and pick up that thought where I left off. But anyways, sales and talent into the companies we invest in, like that is our value proposition to our founders. And it's the greatest challenge that they're facing. And speaking, I want to use this graphic from McKinsey & Co. to illustrate that while, there's this huge, lots of talk about the Great Recession and how people there's a big exodus from typical work. That isn't necessarily the case with the industries that we're investing in and what we're speaking about today. There's actually a huge migration from people who are not connected in an emotional way or a purposeful way to the work that they're doing every day. If you aren't connected to what you're doing, why would you take the time away from your family? So we're seeing a huge migration into these types of companies that are purposeful. And there's a few reasons for that. It's not just the purpose, but, like with my leading with our group photo on the Sunshine Coast, it's that being accepted for all of who you are as a person, for all of your diversity, and that not just being accepted, but empowered and emboldened so that we can all bring the greatest contribution to our work. And so that sense of belonging is really key. And so when we're working with our founders and how they can find key people to grow their business, the first thing that we delve into is their culture and how they support their employees, whether it's in person, hybrid, or remote. And cultivating that sense of belonging is absolutely key. And so it's one of the things that I would, as people are making a transition into this industry, like that should be kind of front of mind. And when you're asking the probing questions of a potential place that you're going to go work, is like, what is the culture like? How do you cultivate a sense of belonging, and being able to figure out if you're going to be able to find that home in this place. But there are plenty of other non-emotional incentives to join this space. So there is about this year alone, there have been, I think, 7 climate tech mega funds that have been launched. We're talking in like the double-digit billions of dollars of money funneling into this space. This is absolutely where the world is going. So if your motives are primarily financial, which I mean, we all have that to a degree, this is where you want to be. Like this is the industry that is going to be delivering value over the next 100 years. This is where all of the this is where the huge amount of capital is flowing, and this is where the biggest unicorns and the biggest wins are going to be financially. So, another thing that in the startup world, and this is not specific to climate tech at all, but having an ownership stake, whether it's equity, profit sharing, these are all things that are available to people as they join startup businesses. And if I had an ownership stake, and I do, I want that to be in not only an industry that's going to be delivering solutions for the globe, but also, so that my family's hopefully growing, stake in the world and wealth is predicated on something that's doing good, but it's also well positioned to grow, and that's climate tech. So now I'll speak a little bit more specifically about our portfolio, and I'm going to run through these companies in a really kind of high level, just who they are and what they do, what their impact is. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to each of these companies and then talk about the opportunities that we're seeing across the portfolio. So starting on the left-hand side, AquaCycle, one of my favorites. They have a hard tech modular wastewater system where they use microbes to treat industrial wastewater. So like at a food and beverage plant, there's effluent that flows out. Bacteria in an anaerobic environment digests that, produces electricity to power the system, and then what flows out of it is like clean water. So it's not going into like municipal sewer systems, which you might be surprised is generally the case. They just pay to pollute. Debt is a local company here, very early, but what they do is there are building retrofit specialists who have created a software platform that can automate the roadmap to net zero for commercial buildings. Little fun fact, 30% of all carbon emissions are from the built environments, from energy loss through buildings. So they are automating the retrofit process. Carbon America, based in Colorado, is carbon capture and storage, but they do it on site. So with an ethanol plant, they'll capture the carbon, transport it, and store it underground. Chop Value is a pretty cool one. They collect chopsticks, like what you would use at any restaurant, and have a patented process to upcycle those into high value goods. So like a coaster or a cutting board or a desktop, it's individual chopsticks that have been consolidated into a high strength material and is absolutely beautiful. Their model is to create franchises, so micro factory franchises around the world. And so they employ local people in an urban environment, collecting things that would otherwise be waste. Clear is a software company so it's optimization and analytics software for solar and wind power generation plants. GoJava is one of our earliest investments, so it actually doesn't fall under the umbrella of climate tech, but it is a office delivery but does it in a sustainable way. So they take it's a zero waste office snack and coffee company. Inkblot is actually our first exit. It was a mental health service delivery platform. Jazza Energy is one I want to highlight. So Jazza is, they work primarily in Africa, and they create solar generation hubs that power batteries for people in Tanzania and now Nigeria to power their homes. So transitioning off of fossil fuels, primarily kerosene, and using a renewable energy source, and they only employ women. So in these societies, it's not ubiquitous for women to have an income. So they provide an income stream and therefore a path to independence and education for women while also transitioning to renewable energy. Kila is a CRM for nonprofits, so competing in the world of Salesforce, but is enabling smaller organizations to be able to use strong technology to raise money. Manifest Climate is software to, so, you know, coming out of COP, you would hear a lot about like ESG and climate risk automation. So they do, their software will let financial institutions look into their climate risk and help mitigate that and create roadmaps towards net zero. The valuations in climate tech are really strong, and that's because that's where the momentum is. Symmetrica is an impact management data service platform. So institution or investors like us will be able to look into across their portfolio and dive into the impact metrics and report that back to investors with using an automated platform. Social Nature is a trial service for natural and organic products. Solstice is another one that's really, really interesting. So they do community solar. So for everybody who doesn't live in a single family dwelling and can afford to put solar panels on top of their roof, for the majority of people who live in an urban setting, they don't have access to solar energy. And so what Solstice does is they give access to multi-unit residences to solar generation, and then so gives low-income people generally access to not only renewable power, but far cheaper power. And they are growing exponentially, and they're one of the ones that has some of the largest number of opportunities to join them. Switch is a Canadian company, and they do electric vehicle charging stations, but also for multi-unit residential buildings. So, you know, again, like there's so many things about sustainability and climate that are a bit elitist. And so if you don't live in a house where you can plug your Tesla into the outlet and charge it yourself, you need a shared infrastructure. And that's what Switch does. Therma is so Internet of Things monitoring for the cold chain. So another fun fact is, I think it's 20%. Like one of the, I'll frame it this way. One of the top project drawdown things that we can do to mitigate climate is revolutionize the cold chain between the chemicals that are emitted and the power that it takes. It's wildly inefficient. Therma revolutionizes that and makes it more efficient. N-Cycle is efficiency software for HVAC, rooftop HVAC units in commercial buildings. Empowered is like the Stripe, but for clean tech projects. So it allows commercial property owners to operationalize retrofit or efficiency projects straight from a payment platform. And the last one, and I realized going through these, this is taking a little bit of time and it's probably hard to retain, but Real Vision Analytics is like the ways of train. So efficiency software so that we can reduce the diesel consumption of rail. And every month we do in our newsletter, I go through each of the companies and I do a roundup of what the opportunities are in each of them. And every month the list is about this long, and each of these hyperlinks is linking to about 5 or 10 different positions. So what I want to emphasize here is that you don't have to be a person of an engineering background. You can come from a customer service background. Like all of these are primarily tech businesses who need people in customer success, in business development, in sales. Or if you do come from a background, I think actually the largest need is in software and development. Then we like lots of opportunity in engineering, coming from basically any background or any skill set, you can find a place in any of these businesses. Like you heard me rattle through like so many different industries and impact areas, but they need roles across every different competency. And that's not changing. Each of these companies is growing, and every time they receive funding from an investor like us, it only catalyzes the need for more hiring. And I want to make sure that I stop there. I'll leave this up for a few seconds, but I want to switch to questions, like a dialogue with all of you. Pranav, do we have anything that I can field or speak to someone about now?
Absolutely. Even Ivan, and I hope I'm not killing the name. Ivan, I would invite you to just unmute yourself and please ask the question. I think it's a very interesting one. Yep.
Hey, Elyse, Evan from Climate Base.
Oh, hey, Evan.
Hello. Hey, good to see you. Also, this is awesome, by the way. Such a, like, your perspective in this, I think is really valuable because you also have that bird's eye view. I'm going to take myself off video because I'm just in the car. So my question is like something I often find is that people who are new to this space often sort of struggle to decipher like what is and what isn't climate. And, you know, there's so many different ways that you can think about it, right? But I'm curious to hear from your perspective, now that your fund is shifting to be solely focused on climate tech, which of your portfolio companies would you say don't fall into that category? Like the chopstick company, would you like consider that to be like really having a climate impact, or is that a little bit different?
We would still classify it as having a climate impact because it's in the circular economy.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's not even just about exactly what the product is, it's about how it's shifting an industry. So, you know, upcycling what was exclusively a waste byproduct, like a single-use waste product that is often shipped across oceans so people can use it or not even use it, like look at it in a bag and not even put it to use. Like upcycling that into basically luxury goods is, you know, it's revolutionizing a supply chain that has a direct climate impact. Even if, you know, we can get all the chopsticks we want out of landfills, it's not going to fix the climate. But if we can do that through enough industries, we will have a significant impact.
Right, that makes a ton of sense. So like, okay, yeah.
Thanks. We also have Yu Cheng. Would you like to unmute yourself and come in with a question? Because I think it's a very relevant one out here.
Yeah, I put that comment instead of a question because like I didn't really have like a specific question in mind, but like it's very interesting that you went through all this list and it opened up my mind about this very like interesting applications in the field. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just sort of rephrase that, and I'll sort of explain why I think it's interesting is because and it's related to the fact that a lot of these businesses, you know, they are in the analytics space and they do have the need for data science, but they are at a particular point where, you know, even they don't realize it. So we definitely would want people who are specifically looking for data science roles to reach out to their domains of interest and explain how they could really add value, because it might be that you're uncovering business models that have not been noticed by others. So I would absolutely encourage you to do that, And I would just also want to, you know, just sort of link this up to what Ivan was mentioning and what Elyse was sharing about the circular economy bit. There are a lot of companies which do this work, but they don't even realize that they're solving part of the climate change problem. So it's very important when somebody like, you know, this gets funded or gets highlighted. It really shifts the industry, as Elyse pointed out. You know, you're literally changing the industry. So very relevant out here. I'm going to move on to Douglas. Douglas, would you like to just come on in and ask this for yourself?
Hey, yeah, this is Satchel Douglas. I kind of have two first names. One's a surname. It's always been a confusion. Anyway, I think I heard you at least mention that you're mostly focused on SaaS, but you have some hardware companies in the portfolio. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have, you know, specializations in places that we can add significant value, and typically those are in companies that have a SaaS product, but we're not exclusive, and it's also very dependent on, you know, founder, the team, and of course the scalability of the product. But you know, I actually was, when we were kind of doing our pre-event prep, it reminded me that, you know, when you're thinking about moving to a company, it's almost like how we would think about investing in a company. You want to know who you're working for. And so when we're looking at founders, it's not just like their grit, their intelligence, but also like who they are as individuals and that they are going to be good people to work for and scale their teams. Yeah, sorry, I think I got a little bit off base of your question there, but I do think it's the culture and the individual is as important as like the scalability of the product.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Ryan, would you like to come in? And I think that's a very interesting, point that you've raised.
Yeah, hi there. I was just wondering, for someone who is in tech in general, but outside of the sort of green tech or climate space, trying to explore options on where to specifically plug in. Climate is pretty broad and can have transportation, energy, housing, ag or food. What would you say is the best way, maybe prior to a move, to explore those different avenues?
Oh, that's a tough one, Ryan. I think you have to start with what you're passionate about. It's such a daunting, I think it's a daunting way to phrase the problem is, like what is the most important, and rather turn it into like, where can you have the greatest fulfillment and therefore the greatest impact? Like what aspects, there's so many, like climate encompasses so much, whether it's materials and supply chain and consumerism, or like even in food, like where our food comes from, how our food is disposed of. Like, are you passionate about food? Are you passionate about clothing? Is it energy or like mobility? Figuring out like where you think, like where your heart is, and like starting from there, and then looking at like, if you're looking at particular companies, like where your skill set feeds into the greatest need. Though I think, as I mentioned, like there are so many through lines in all of these industries, but I would start with where you care about. Like for me, like as I mentioned when I was doing my intro, like I was coming from an environmental law charity and figured out that what I was doing, like myself, I was invested in these products. So for me, it's about changing incentives. Like writ large, that's where my passion is. Like if we're going to change society to be more sustainable, we have to change people's incentives and their consumer behavior. And so like if we can make money by doing good, then that will revolutionize everything. And that's what I'm most passionate about. And that's why I went into impact investing. But it could have easily been like, how we grow food is not sustainable. And then like look at agriculture or ag tech. Like there's just so many different umbrellas where you have to kind of look into the kind of taxonomy of it and then plinko ball down.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Aneri, would you like to come in with your comment and your question?
Sure. I just had a question about when you talked about culture and operations. Thought that was really great. And how do you build that sense of culture with teams in different locations around the world who don't have those opportunities to get together, like your family work offsite example? I just find it's really tough when everyone's kind of virtual and in different time zones and are kind of confined to like meeting hours on Zoom to like build that sense of community. So true. We start our week every week with we have a Monday check-in, and it's always the same format. The meeting starts with shout outs. So big or small, you shout out someone else or shout out multiple people and what they did in the previous week that is just noteworthy that you want to shout them out for. I think that's a huge thing, and just like praising and appreciation of your coworkers. And it could be something as silly like a joke that you made or whatever, or like hard and fast things that they did with the business. And then that meeting ends with what we call a why leader. So it rotates, and each person who does it nominates the next person, but we end the meeting with your why. And it's like, why do you do this work? Why are you excited to come to work?
and then it could be in relation to current events. Like we've had this year in the place that I live, like we started with a June heat dome, which was temperatures I didn't know were possible. And then we had forest fires all summer, and then we had tornadoes coming out of the ocean. And then most recently, we're having this new thing called atmospheric rivers. That feeds into my why, like learning new names for weather events. But we end it with why. And that permeates in all of our meetings. And it just also creates a form of connection. Like a lot of people in their why leader will give a personal story or something that was inspirational to them. We all take a different approach to it. But I think creating space in the meetings, because you're not going to get away from Zoom meetings, but you have to create space within those meetings for those interactions that would otherwise happen kind of ad hoc. Like it all leads back to supporting people as like, come as you are, who you are as a whole person. So I hope like those things might be like have some practical applications for your team. But yeah, come with your why and appreciation for people on the team.
Love that, love that. I have another interesting one from Muniba. Muniba, would you like to comment? And I think that's a good take and a good question there. Muniba?
Sure. So first, yeah, thanks, Elyse, for presenting. And yeah, maybe it's not so much a question, it's just an observation. But previously, I worked at this organization that worked on climate mitigation. And so that meant like they focused on areas based on their modeling that could be quantified in terms of like GHG emissions reductions. And so it was part of their identity to focus on mitigation. And they would say things like, we're not an environmental organization, we're a climate mitigation organization. And so it's just to hear you talk about your portfolio and the kinds of companies that you work with, it is interesting for me to think about like maybe in climate tech, like are there ways that we can think more expansively about what is climate, especially when we do have these models like Drawdown, and the organization I worked at is called ClimateWorks. They actually made their own kind of like in response to Drawdown, like a different kind of modeling, and like they would go based off of that. And so it was just a little bit harder to make room for these other things, which might be kind of like a smaller scale solution, but like you mentioned, they're also actually changing the industry. And so it's just kind of thinking about how can we incorporate these different ways of thinking and maybe be a bit more creative in like what we count towards climate.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And this actually comes up a lot in like the B Corp community. So for those not aware, like to be a certified B Corp, you have to do a rigorous assessment that's like how you treat the community, how you treat your workers, how you treat your customers, and how you treat the environment. And then it gets like rigorously audited, and it's different depending on your industry and how big you are and all that stuff. But one of the things that comes up a lot is like everything's climate, whether you're working towards sustainability or working counterproductive to it. Just like everything is inclusion and like justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Like these are two things that encompass everything that we do. Every company can be a climate company if they take the necessary steps to right the wrongs of like the incumbent industries that they exist in. So I think it's, look, not every company is classified, of course, as a climate tech company, but no matter what type of business you operate in, it's incumbent upon you to be like to advocate for justice, diversity, and inclusion, but also to advocate for sustainability. And those are people that are workers within any company actually have the greatest ability to influence that really necessary change.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Awesome, great. I have another one from Alison. Alison, would you like to unmute yourself and come on in?
Hi, thank you, Elyse. This is such a great presentation. So I'm curious if there's any support that you offer to these companies to grow in a sustainable manner. So, you know, we're all in this situation because of this focus on unlimited growth. And so, you know, I worry about, you know, you talked about the huge financial gain to be had and all this. And so I worry about a situation where we're only creating a new breed of companies that really don't ultimately help in the long term, you know. So, and you have this, you know, experience with B Corp, which, so I'm curious to what you guys do to help these businesses not just solve a problem, but be part of a greater solution.
Yeah, this is a super good question. Thank you for it. So we ask all of our companies to do the B impact assessment, but because it also helps us assess their internal operations, which is all feed into their top line growth. Like if they have a good culture, they treat their workers well, they treat their customers well, then they will have stronger retention and also stronger avenues towards growth. And then, you know, we are, at the end of the day, like we are generally minority, well, exclusively minority investors in these companies. So we can't dictate, but we can help steward. And that is, you know, part of the increase in demand for, like, when a company is raising capital, there's absolutely like a surge in demand to raise capital from aligned investors like us, because founders typically don't want, you know, someone on their capitalization table telling them like, oh, you have to shoot for this exponential growth. And who cares about all of these like cultural sustainability initiatives? Like they want investors that are going to support all aspects of the company that they want to create. So it's, you know, it starts with the founder. It is stewarded by, you know, having partners and investors that are aligned in the mission of the business. And, you know, we like in like not just at Active, but at Renewal and so many impact investors really say like patient money, because that is absolutely critical. Like you can't create like this, you know, the venture capital adage of like 8 die and 2 fly, like that doesn't work for us, because we don't invest in companies unless we really believe that their product or service is necessary. So we are patient and supportive first of founders. We want to like leverage our expertise to help enrich the sustainability endeavors that they're already doing. And, you know, we want every business to grow, and even in tough times, we'll be there fighting with them. Because we care about all of them. So yeah, it's difficult, and we can't be too dictatorial about it. But it's really core to like who we are as a business. And if we weren't like that, then we wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't have investors coming to us in the ways that they do, because we're essentially an intermediary between individuals who invest in us and us investing in the company. And so that values alignment has to be there at every step of the chain.
Great. So we're moving into the last couple of questions. Corey, I love what you just asked out there. Would you come on in, please, and share with us?
Yes. Hi, how are you? First of all, thank you for taking the time. This has been really helpful. So I'm very grateful for this time. We're working on a concept that involves creating a climate movement, you know, and there's very specific tech around it. And, you know, we've been talking to a couple of different investors, and there are very profitable revenue streams involved in this. So it's not just, you know, just posting on social media and come out and be an activist. There are, you know, we're looking at ways to unify NGOs around the world and creating this movement in a much larger marketing strategy that's not been done before. But creating this type of technology, I was wondering, is that really considered climate tech?
I mean, not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
No, because it's not mitigating emissions or creating like quantifiable efficiencies, but it's climate tech adjacent. You know, the more consumer demands in every aspect of society that we have to, you know, to have rigorous sustainability standards, the like cultivating that consumer demand is part of the ecosystem. Absolutely.
Yeah, and part of this is educating the public. I mean, whether I was reading a UN report or, you know, something from IPCC, everybody talks about the education aspect of it. You know, people need to become more aware, and that's really what this technology is about. So I was just kind of curious to if where it kind of falls in the spectrum of climate tech.
I mean, it's an impact business for sure. Like, and it's climate. It's just whether or not it's like climate tech in the typical nomenclature of the word. But I think it's part of the whole ecosystem as well. And as you were saying, this isn't your question, but like, it's not only just like helping people educate on like what's going on, but it's helping them mitigate like fear, like, you know, like that's a huge part of this. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about helping like bring people into not only the businesses that we invest in, but also just like sustainability careers writ large, because the biggest antidote to like climate malaise and just like sheer terror is to do this in your work. Like I have in my social life, I'm like the go-to for like what's going on in the climate. And I am potentially the more like one of the more optimistic ones in my social group because I get to see these companies and innovations every day. Like there are people all over the world doing incredible things that are now at the point of inevitability that we're gonna get through this. I genuinely believe that. I mean, I think it's going to get much worse before it gets better, but I think as a society, we're going to get it together. So yeah.
I'm with you.
Awesome, great. I'm bringing this back to point. I mean, as all climate conversations, we sort of tend to broaden out the conversation, but just, bringing it back to point. Do you have any recommendations on how to make your application stand out?
Yeah, great question. So just like, you want to work in a company that leads with their purpose, you want to lead with yours. So what hiring managers, founders will be looking for is, does your personal mission and values align with theirs? Because when you find that fit, then there's the greatest opportunity for impact, but also just generally like the greatest retention. So it's, you want to work for people whose personality you mesh with, but you want to like the vision for the world and vision for change. You want to lead with that in your application. Because so I think that's absolutely paramount. Like be personal, tell a little bit of your story and how you came to this work, why you want to do it, like how you see yourself being involved in the company, not only in like a practical sense, like I have a background in customer relations, like I believe in this, I believe in what you do. The more you can speak to that, like the more that you'll resonate, like not just at like a practical, but like at an emotional level with whomever is reading your application. It's definitely what I look for.
Fantastic. And I think we're just approaching the end of the hour in terms of the timeline. And so I'm very respectful of that. Let me start off, first of all, by thanking you, Elyse. I think this has been an amazing interactive session. Really appreciate your time and all of this information. Thanks for putting that back up. Great. I would highly encourage everybody to reach out across all the three communities, right? The impact investments, active impact investments, work on climate, as well as innovate climate career. We are absolutely here to talk to you. And as Daniel always says, we need to put the human element back into hiring. I would like to thank Sam and Utkarsh for taking out, bringing to life this opportunity, this collaboration. Thank you so much, guys, and Daniel. And Utkarsh, back to you to bring this home.
Yeah, firstly, just want to thank you, Elyse, for sharing your perspective and all of these wonderful opportunities. I only want to add one more thing, which is for the Work on Climate group or the Work on Climate community. We have this tradition of creating a thread after the event in the event's official channel where we can follow up with all of this information. At least I know that you're on the community as well. So if anyone has any follow-ups that we were not able to get to, please put them there. And I'm sure, either Elyse or others that have information on that will be able to answer your questions. We'll put all of these links in there as well, so you can access it easily. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it. And based on the reactions to this event, we'll try to have more of these sorts of events where we bring in diverse perspectives within the space for all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Stay safe, guys. Take care.